Sometimes the hardest seasons of our lives are the ones that look like nothing is happening at all. The quiet moments, the waiting, the closed doors, the unanswered prayers. And it's in those moments we often ask, why me? Why now? Or worse, why nothing? But what if I told you that silence is an absence? And pain isn't punishment. See, when something is being built in silence, that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It usually means everything is happening just beneath the surface. Think about the seed. Before it becomes a tree, before it produces fruit, it sits in darkness, buried, covered, seemingly forgotten. But something miraculous is happening. Roots are forming. The foundation is being set. And even though no one claps for roots, they're what holds up the tree when the storms come. And that's how God prepares us, not always in the spotlight, not with applause, but in quiet places where there's no validation, no recognition, no one saying, "You're doing great." Because what's being grown in silence is strength. And strength doesn't shout. It shows up when it's needed most. Sometimes we confuse comfort with progress. We think that if life is smooth, we're moving forward. But God doesn't prepare you for greatness with comfort. He prepares you with challenge, with resistance, with moments that make you question your worth, your path, your calling. Because in those questions, we don't find weakness. We find depth. We find faith. We find who we are without titles, roles, or achievements. I've talked to people who say, everything was going right, then it all fell apart. And they think that collapse is a curse. But sometimes what falls apart was never meant to be permanent. Sometimes it had to break to make room for what's real. Sometimes the pain isn't trying to break you. It's trying to build you. To show you what's been inside of you all along, waiting to come alive. You may be in a season right now where everything feels still. You're doing the work. You're showing up. You're praying, trying, hoping, and still nothing seems to move. That's not failure. That's formation. That's God saying, before I give you what's next, I need to strengthen what's now. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. Prepared to hold the weight of what you prayed for. Prepared to walk through doors that require humility, patience, character, and integrity. Prepared to be the version of yourself that doesn't just chase purpose, but lives it. And if you don't feel like you're there yet, that's okay. Most preparation seasons don't come with timelines. They come with trust. Trust that what's happening now isn't wasted. Trust that even the delays, detours, and disappointments are shaping you for something greater. God doesn't always give explanations. He gives process. And we often want the blessing without the burden. But the truth is, every great calling comes with great responsibility. Every answered prayer comes with weight. And before you can carry it, you have to be shaped to sustain it. That's why pain shows up first. It's not because you're weak. It's because you're strong enough to be entrusted with more. But only if you let the pain purify, not poison. Let it teach, not torment. Let it prepare, not paralyze. Some of the greatest versions of yourself will only emerge after you've gone through something that was meant to break you. That job loss, that breakup, that season of isolation, that feeling of being overlooked, it was never the end. It was a refining fire. And when fire touches gold, the gold doesn't burn. The impurities do. You're not being destroyed. You're being defined. So don't resent the silence. Don't rush the process. Don't mistake stillness for stagnation. This isn't the end. It's the making of you. When God is preparing you for something greater, it rarely feels like preparation. It feels like pressure. But diamonds don't form without pressure. And you are being formed right now, even when it doesn't make sense. Don't give up just because you can't see the progress. What you're becoming is more important than what you're receiving. Who you are becoming will always outlast the reward. And maybe, just maybe, the pain you feel today is the proof that something powerful is on its way. You ever wonder why some people seem to carry so much weight on their shoulders, not just from responsibilities, but from life itself? loss, rejection, isolation, failure. And yet they rise. It's because there's a universal truth that most of us forget. When we're in the thick of our struggle, the greater the calling, the deeper the carving. You don't build a cathedral with the tools used for a cottage. You don't train a warrior with the comfort of a couch. You don't prepare a heart for greatness with shallow waters. And that's why your preparation feels heavier than most. It's not because you're less, it's because you're being carved for more. We all want the mountaintop moments. We all want the breakthrough, the recognition, the success. But no one sees what happens before that. The breaking, the surrender, the hidden work. That's where the carving takes place. That's where the depth is created to hold something far greater than you imagined. And here's the thing, carving doesn't just remove the excess, it shapes the purpose. Think of a sculptor standing before a block of marble. To most, it's just a rock. But the sculptor doesn't see what it is. He sees what it could become. And so, he chisels. Not once, not twice, but hundreds of times. Each strike of the hammer seems destructive from the outside. But to the sculptor, each strike is intentional, purposeful, transformational. That's what God does with us. You might feel like you're being hit over and over by life, by heartbreak, by disappointment. But each of those moments is carving something deeper inside of you. Compassion, strength, humility, grit, wisdom. Things that can't be taught in comfort, only discovered through pressure. We don't like to talk about pain in this way because we've been conditioned to avoid it. We want healing without hurting, growth without breaking. We want to be called without being carved. But it doesn't work like that. You don't get depth without digging. You don't get strength without strain. You don't get wisdom without wounds. And here's what I've learned. You won't always understand the carving while it's happening. It doesn't make sense when your plans fall apart. It doesn't feel fair when your loyalty isn't returned. It doesn't seem right when you're giving your all and still being overlooked. But just because it doesn't make sense now doesn't mean it won't serve you later. Some of the strongest people you know didn't get that strength through ease. They got it through endurance. They've been through the kind of nights where they had no one but God, the kind of battles that forced them to confront their own doubts, their own limits. But through all of it, they didn't just survive, they were shaped. See, there are some things you can only carry once. You've been cut open, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, deeply. Because greatness isn't something you wear, it's something you carry. It's a weight, a responsibility, and not everyone's carved to hold it. So when you ask, why is this happening to me? Maybe the better question is, what is this shaping in me? Because life will either carve you or crush you. And the only difference is whether you let the pain make you bitter or make you better. The most beautiful souls I've ever known are the ones who've walked through fire but refused to come out burned. They came out refined. They didn't pretend the pain didn't hurt. They just refused to let it harden their hearts. They let the carving go deep, not to destroy them, but to create room for something divine. You're not weak for feeling broken. You're not falling apart for no reason. You're being hollowed out so you can hold more purpose, more grace, more understanding, more impact. So if you feel like life has been hitting you from every direction, if you've been asking, why so much? Maybe it's because you're meant to carry something bigger than most. The carving hurts, yes. But when it's done, what remains is purpose shaped, storm tested, and soul approved. Don't run from the process. Don't rush through it. What's being formed in you isn't ordinary. And that's why it requires extraordinary preparation. And maybe the reason it feels like you're being broken is because you're finally being built. One of the most misunderstood seasons in life is the one where nobody sees you. You're showing up, you're working hard, you're praying, you're waiting. And yet, The silence is louder than ever. No recognition, no breakthrough, no applause, just you, your thoughts, and the uncomfortable quiet. And in that stillness, it's easy to believe that God has forgotten you, or worse, abandoned you. But I want to tell you something that most people don't realize until much later. Obscurity is not absence, it's alignment. See, just because you feel hidden doesn't mean you're lost. And just because you feel unseen doesn't mean you're unvalued. Sometimes the most sacred, most necessary work happens when no one is watching. Because it's in those invisible seasons that God is aligning your soul, your mindset, your heart, and your path with something far greater than you can see. We live in a world obsessed with visibility, with being seen, with being validated. We think that if it's not posted, if it's not praised, then it must not matter. But some of the most important growth happens in silence. In the quiet mornings when you're healing. In the lonely nights when you're choosing faith over fear. In the decisions you make when no one is watching. Those are the decisions that define you, that shape your character, that prepare you for the moment your name is called. Don't confuse God's silence with his absence. He hasn't left you. He's positioning you. There's a story I often come back to about an archer and the bow. Before the arrow can fly, the bow has to be pulled back. The further it's pulled, the greater its potential distance. And yet, in that moment, the arrow isn't moving forward, it's being drawn back. It looks like regression. It feels like tension. But it's actually alignment, because in order to launch with purpose, you have to be aimed with precision. And that's what God does in your season of obscurity. He's not punishing you. He's pulling you back, away from distractions, away from the noise, away from anything that could blur your focus or distort your identity. Because before he launches you, he wants to make sure you're aimed in the right direction. Some doors are closed, not because you're unworthy, but because you're not ready, or the door isn't. Sometimes the relationship didn't work out, not because you failed, but because the timing wasn't aligned. Sometimes you're hidden because the stage that's being built for you isn't finished yet. And if you rush the process, you'd step onto something that wasn't strong enough to hold what's inside you. I know it's hard to wait. I know it's frustrating to feel overlooked, passed by, unseen. But don't waste your hidden season wishing it away. This is where you're being sharpened. This is where you're learning to hear your own voice. This is where you're learning to hear his voice. When the noise is gone, when the applause fades, when the distractions are stripped away, what are you left with? That answer will define how you show up when the spotlight finally comes. We admire people who carry peace, wisdom, and strength. But that kind of presence isn't built in public. It's forged in private. It's the result of hours, weeks, even years spent in spaces where they had nothing to rely on except their relationship with God and their willingness to keep showing up even when no one noticed. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not forgotten. You're just in alignment. And alignment always comes before acceleration. Imagine if every dream came true the moment you ask for it. You wouldn't be ready. You wouldn't have the foundation to sustain it. You wouldn't have the wisdom to navigate it. You might even sabotage it because your character hadn't caught up with your calling. That's why God aligns before he releases. So if you're in a quiet season right now, if it feels like everyone else is moving forward and you're stuck, if you're wondering when your time will come, hold on. Your silence has a purpose. Your obscurity is not a punishment, it's a preparation ground. And one day, you'll look back at this season and realize it wasn't wasted time. It was divine alignment. And maybe the reason no one sees you right now is because God is making sure nothing distracts you from seeing him. We've all been there when something you hoped for didn't happen. When the door you prayed would open stayed shut. When the plan you carefully crafted fell apart in your hands. And the first feeling that washes over you is confusion. You start to question everything. Did I miss something? Was I not good enough? Is God even listening? But sometimes what looks like a setback is actually a divine detour. See, we're taught to believe that delay equals denial. That if something doesn't happen when we want it to, how we want it to, it must mean it wasn't meant for us. But that's not always the truth. Sometimes delay isn't rejection, it's protection. A loving pause that says, not now, not because you can't, but because what's coming deserves a version of you that's not finished yet. We think we're ready because we want something so badly. But wanting it and being ready for it are two very different things. God knows when the opportunity, the relationship, the platform, the moment is aligned, not just with your desires, but with your development. You might be asking, why hasn't it happened yet? But God might be saying, because I love you too much to give it to you too soon. Think about this. What if that dream job had worked out and crushed you under the weight of its demands? What if that relationship had continued and pulled you further from your peace? What if that opportunity had come and your insecurities hadn't been healed yet? We often ask God to move us forward, but He's more interested in making sure we're grounded before we rise. There's wisdom in the waiting. There's power in the pause. When the path seems blocked, it's not always because you're off track. It could be that you're being rerouted to something better, something bigger, something more aligned with who you're becoming. We love the idea of elevation, but elevation requires structure, foundation, preparation. The taller the building, the deeper the groundwork, the more significant your purpose, the more intentional the delay. And I get it. It's frustrating. We're wired for speed. Fast answers, quick results, instant everything, but growth doesn't rush. And God's timing doesn't bend to our impatience, because what He's building isn't a moment, it's a movement. And He wants to make sure you're not just stepping into a blessing, you're ready to sustain it. Think back to moments in your life where something didn't work out, and at the time, it broke your heart. But now you see why. Now you understand what you couldn't back then. That no saved you. That delay matured you. That detour taught you lessons you would have missed if everything had gone to plan. It's only when we look back that the dots connect and we realize God wasn't saying, no, He was saying, wait, or sometimes I have something better. We often pray for things with a narrow vision, not realizing that we're aiming too small. What feels like loss may actually be a pivot into something you never knew you needed. God doesn't operate by the map you drew. He creates a path that doesn't always make sense in the moment, but later you'll thank Him for it. This is where trust becomes real. Not the kind of trust we talk about when things are going well, but the kind of trust we hold on to when nothing is working, when the silence is deafening, when everything inside you wants to give up. But you don't. You wait. You believe, you hold on. Because something deep inside of you knows that delay is part of the design. Even the detours, even the closed doors, even the unanswered prayers, they're not signs of being forgotten. They're reminders that something greater is unfolding. It may not be clear yet. It may not be visible. But it's being woven together behind the scenes. So don't let the delay make you doubt the destination. Don't let the pause convince you that you've been overlooked. Don't confuse stillness with stagnation. You're not stuck. You're being set up, and maybe the door didn't open because what's waiting for you behind another one will change everything.